The cabal of darkness within it has many secret societies. And of these societies, there are the high elders, those who are esteemed for their brilliance and also for their artful and masterful understanding and usage of the darkness. And one such man was Albert Pike. And Albert Pike, sometime before the First World War, wrote of 3 world wars. And the First and Second World War did occur very much in the way that he said they had to occur, for the agenda to unfold, culminating in this cabal, this group of elites and secret societies, assuming total and utter dominion over the earth and all its resources, including humanity. And in this document which he wrote, there was a 3rd World War. And this was written 150 years ago, before the First World War. And he said, the 3rd World War must be... Hi, it's Muzz iEvolv. Thank you very much for being here again today. So many options, yet here you are. It's afternoon. Normally when you see me channeling, I'm channeling in the morning, but just things get in the way. So it's now getting a little late. I haven't channeled yet, but I don't want to let you down. I've missed so many. I'm here to do it for you. If you could please, at this moment, take just a few seconds to like, subscribe, comment, share on this video, because I don't really get any love from YouTube. I only get all my love from you guys, so I'd really appreciate if you could do that. Have you read this book yet? If not, why not read it now? The link is below. I finished recording the audiobook version of this book last night, and that's all edited, uploaded, all ready to go. So I think next time you see me next week, I will be announcing that I'm releasing this book, and I will place the links and so on below the video, so you'll be able to purchase it. I'm going to make it really cheap. I'm going to make it a really cheap book for you to get. Okay, well, on to today's topic. The topic that I was going to go to with today, I'm going to shelve that and I'm going to discuss something else. My guides have been kind of yakking in my ear since yesterday that they want to say something about the Israel-Palestine conflict. And it's such a touchy subject. It's such a touchy subject. It's so polarizing and so fracturing of society in many different ways. People who are, agree with each other on so many things, this can be something that splits them down the middle. So it's treacherous ground, but they insist they want to say something about it. So we're going to do a channel on that today. And I think it'll be a short one. I really don't know. I'm not sure what's coming through, but let's see what's there. Okay, here we go. So I'll give it a title. The title will be Israel and Palestine, a Channeled Perspective. Okay. Greetings and thank you for the opportunity to lay out some perspectives on the Israel-Palestine event. And so we are calling this session Israel and Palestine, a Channeled Perspective. This is somewhat of a minefield, and so we will do our best to tread lightly. This is not about picking sides in the way that the sides have been presented to you and the rest of humanity, but instead to take a broader perspective and witness yet another iteration of something which has been very prevalent in the human experience for a very long time. So, let us begin in this way. Are you aware that there is currently an active war on your planet that has been waged for 60 years at this point? Did you know that? Have you heard of such a war? Did you know that there have been genocides, atrocities in which many millions have died that you did not learn about in the classroom, that it's unlikely you have even ever heard of, and neither have any of your friends. And yet, this particular conflict which we are speaking about today, when you open your phone, it's the first thing you see. When you turn on your television, it's the first thing you see. When you pick up a newspaper, it's the first thing you see. And yet, the populations that are relevant or that are actively part of this conflict are much smaller populations than, for example, other wars, other atrocities, other genocides that have taken place in relatively recent human history that you have never heard of. So why is that? When you watch the news and you will be presented in a single news session, perhaps 20 topics, 20 news events, 15 news events, 10 news events, but really never more than that. And yet there are 8 billion people on your planet. There are approximately 200 nations. And there are natural disasters and economic and financial and climatic and industrial catastrophes and so on every single day. Yet it is only a small handful of the vast number of possibilities that could be presented to you as newsworthy that you become aware of. So, why? On what basis are you hearing some stories but not hearing other stories? Because if on any single day there are approximately 10,000 or 100,000 newsworthy items that have happened that day across the planet, and yet you are only hearing about 10 of them, so clearly they have been cherry-picked very discerningly, very deliberately, that those 10 particular stories are the ones above all others that you were told about. And the assumption is, I am hearing of these 10 stories because these are the 10 most important stories. But are they really? Who is making that determination? So let us look at the News Corporation itself. Is the News Corporation a benevolent organisation? Does it exist to serve you, the consumer? When you consider how much influence news has, so news literally has the power to shape public opinion. Through many times in history, entire nations have agreed that war is necessary. Yet there was a point when they did not feel that way. The population, the citizenry, were against the war. And yet, after some time, they very much felt it was necessary to go to war. What happened in the interim? They were persuaded by the news media to be champions of the war. Yet, when you look at the paradigm, who is it that goes to war? It is the men and women who are the consumers of the news. It is the young men and women who are the children of the consumers of the news. And so when there is impoverishment, when there is destruction, it is this consumer class that are most affected. And yet those who are at the elite class, who own the news media, they do not go to war. Their children do not go to war. And in fact, they own the industries which profit from war. So then when you look at the news media industry, it becomes clear it doesn't exist to serve the consumer, although that is the branding, that they are here for you, to keep you abreast of everything that's important in the world. Clearly, the news media exists to serve the owners, those that are behind the news, those that are determining which stories are going to be in the news that night. So, why? Why then, on what basis, are they choosing those particular stories? Those particular events and happenings? It is because they are advantageous for the furtherment of whatever agenda it is they're pursuing. So they are agenda driven. When they are supporting of the agenda, when they push the agenda forward, then that's when those stories are chosen. And even when they wish to have a particular type of story, because that would be most supporting of a particular type of agenda, but there is an absence of such stories, there are no stories, then the elite, the cabal, those that are at the very highest level of manipulation over global geopolitical events, they will literally orchestrate, fabricate an event, because then it can be used within the machinery of the industrial news apparatus to make leaps and bounds forward in the direction of their agenda. When you open all forms of media which interacts you with the system and exposes you to the false narrative at this particular time, understand it is very deliberate that you are seeing details and images and stories and opinions and perspectives of this conflict from all directions, because it serves an agenda. So, looking at the example that we mentioned previously, the agenda is an agenda which serves the elite at the detriment of those outside of the elitist circles, which is the vast bulk of humanity. So, what is the effect of this current myopic focus on that event? It is creating division. It is creating fractures and fissures and divisions in the human field. And it's setting up scenarios where it now becomes justifiable to take more violent action. Whether it is good or bad, or justified or unjustified, or atrocious, or self-defense, to some extent this is irrelevant. And we don't say this to belittle or minimize what each side of this conflict are going through. Each have their legitimate grievances. Each have done things which are regrettable from the perspective of where humanity is going. And depending on your perspective, it could be argued that one side is more justified than the other. And from a different perspective, it's actually the other side that is more justified than the other. So, there is no perfect solution to this situation. And that's why it is a perfect scenario for the elite. Because it is something which festers and lives on and cannot be extinguished. It is an agitation within the human field which can be spread and manipulated and agitated and stirred up such that it starts infecting all regions of your planet. And so now the entire human field is becoming increasingly fractured, increasingly fissured, increasingly divided. And in doing so, your societies are becoming more susceptible to all of the other forms of attack which are coming from the cabal at this time. Because when communities and families and friendships which were once unified in almost all topics, are now being split on this very divisive war, then this is a weakening of the human field. It is a phenomenon which is entirely contrary and opposite to where humanity is organically heading. So, with this in mind, do your best not to descend into the level of the conflict where you can choose a side, because this is what the narrative wants from you. The narrative wants you to choose a side. They demand that you choose a side, and depending on which side you choose, you will be vilified for choosing that side. You will be vilified for choosing the other side. There is no ground where you can take and be at a place of peace, at a place of friendship with all others, of love with all others, of looking towards the higher realms of which humanity is possible, unless you decide to broaden your perspective and transcend the quagmire of the conflict and see it more clearly as a battle between the light and the dark. This does not imply that one side is more light and one side is more dark. This is not what we are saying. We are saying instead that both sides are victims of a larger dynamic, of a dynamic which is, on one side, the elite who are acting in service to the darkness, pledged to the darkness, and that is what we call the cabal of darkness. And on the other side of this equation is the rest of humanity. Humanity that, as a natural presentation, when they are fully awakened and have transcended from the state of spiritual dichotomy and ascended from the third density into the fourth density to assume their rightful place as the unified being, entirely of the light, then humanity will be living as it is intended to be. Then humanity will be in realization of what it truly is. And all hatred between brothers and sisters and members of the same species, because when we call you brothers and sisters, we are not talking about those who are literally in your family, or those who are literally in your ethnicity, or those who are literally in your religion. Instead, we are talking of those who are in your species, and even beyond that, because we also are your brothers and sisters, as all sentient beings within the cosmos are. We are all children of the same Creator, and thereby, within a certain context of definition, we are all brothers and sisters. And it is a process of transcending these barriers, where those that have seemed to be on the other side of the barrier, on the other side of the field of definition, coalesce into your field, are absorbed by your field, and now they have moved from an outer circle into the inner circle, until eventually your outer circle has expanded to such a degree that now the entirety of the one is included within your circle, and all are seen as your brothers and your sisters, to the point where you now see them as yourself. So close is the bond and the recognition that you are the same being. And this is what gives rise to your entire and complete coalescence back into the identity of the one, where all other beings within the all are not just other beings, but literally are you. And so when there is hatred in your heart, and there is malice in your voice, and there is violence in your action against another human being, in some definition, from an expanded perspective, this is hatred and malice and violence against yourself, because you are all the same being. You are all the humanity being, the special being of which you are all a part. So, let us finish in this way. As you move forward and this event continues to unfold, your greatest service is to not choose a side. There can be a recognition, but that both sides, to some degree, are in the right, and that both sides, to some degree, are in the wrong. And those that are committing these atrocities at the ground level, at the level where they are not aware that it is an orchestration, that they have been manipulated and puppeteered by elites that have deliberately set up the conditions such that this event can occur in this way, at this time. They are dichotomous beings. They are of the light and of the darkness, because this is the most common presentation of all humans in the human field at this time. So they cannot be fairly condemned for being in this state of confusion, in this state of amnesia, because it is the state of humanity at this time. And also, there are many forces that are doing their best to ensure that they stay within this haze, within this state of unknowing and confusion, and therefore act in darkness to those they have been indoctrinated to believe are their enemies, while at the same time they act from light towards those they know are closest to them: their children, their husbands, their wives, their parents, their cousins, and even beyond that. So this love they have, the light that they share with that part of their experience, will one day expand to include all, including those that they most venomously hate at this time, to those that they scream with a bloodlust to destroy, to murder, to behead. If you are going to have an energetic state which is most serving to the human experience at this time, then don't be drawn into the emotionality of this event. Do not be tricked into choosing a side other than the side of humanity. Understand it is an orchestration. Understand it is the result of much planning over many generations. When you consider that the newest of these countries did not become a country until 1948, when the elite statesmen made the decision that they were going to put a nation in this region, why is it that they chose to put a nation of a particular religion and ethnicity completely surrounded by religions and ethnicities that are diametrically opposed to them, and they to them? Does this seem like the actions and the decision making of the highest wisdom and intellect? If these were indeed the highest statesmen and the most capable of making these decisions, then one would be inclined to assume that decision was made because of the potential volatility that could ensue from such an arrangement. The cabal of darkness within it has many secret societies. And of these societies, there are the high elders, those who are esteemed for their brilliance and also for their artful and masterful understanding and usage of the darkness. And one such man was Albert Pike. And Albert Pike, sometime before the First World War, wrote of 3 world wars. And the First and Second World War did occur very much in the way that he said they had to occur, for the agenda to unfold, culminating in this cabal, this group of elites and secret societies, assuming total and utter dominion over the earth and all its resources, including humanity. And in this document which he wrote, there was a third world war. And this was written 150 years ago, before the First World War. And he said, the third world war must be between the political Zionists and the Islamic world. So, if that was always the intention, that there would be a third major conflict across the world between these two groups, would it not make most sense to put a nation of one of these groups in the midst of many nations of the other group, such that it was assured this particular event, war, would occur? Indeed, it does. So it was not foolishness, it was not naivety, it was not men from an earlier time not really understanding geopolitics in the way it's understood today. Instead, it was very calculated, because it is serving an agenda which has very little to do with the outcome of each of you as individual human beings, and entirely to do with this elite group which occupy the levels of power which exist above nations, above laws, above treasuries, and so on. So, keep in your heart a love for all humanity. Do your best not to be sucked into the quagmire of darkness, into the agitation and turmoil of hatred and spite and malice and violence. Because if you were to do that, if you were allowing yourself to be influenced and swayed and persuaded in that way, then you are falling into the trap. You are behaving just as the programming intends. But be above the programming. Be bigger and better than those that orchestrate this deception expect you to be. Make it so they have underestimated who you actually are, how awakened you have become, and how profoundly you love yourself, your Creator, your all, including every human being, regardless of what ethnicity, what religion, what nation, and so on that they happen to be. Thank you, and we love you. Instead of telling you a story today, I'm going to show you a few photos of my life here, and particularly want to show you something about Bango. So this is Bango. This is my favorite photo of him. He's so cute in this photo. That's in Colombia. Anyway, we've got this bike that we're driving around on, a scooter, and this is how I was carrying him. So this is me and my best friend who paid me a surprise visit, just showed up at my doorstep since I got here. And then there's my son at the back of the bike. And if you look there, I'll zoom in, you see that little orange shopping bag, that's Bango. Bango was traveling in the bag. Here's another shot of him in the bag, ready to go somewhere, which not very ideal. So I want to show you what I'm doing now. We've upgraded his travel arrangements, and now he is traveling in cabin class. So if you look here, I see I've bought a dog crate and I've got a fixture, put it on the back of the bike. And if you zoom in, there he is in there. Look how happy. He looks very comfortable, very relaxed in there. So I'm traveling all over this little island with Bango in that crate. So I think people are starting to recognize there's that crazy guy that takes his dog everywhere. traveling in luxury. So that was it. That's all I wanted to show you today. And thanks very much. I love you. And I will speak to you again next week. Bye-bye.